November 30th, 2021 was a day of tragic bloodshed at Oxford High School in Michigan. 4 innocent lives taken. 4 amazing students with the rest of their lives ahead of them murdered in cold blood. 7 more people were shot that day inside the school, but they were able to miraculously survive. But their lives have been changed forever. And the carnage from that day has impacted so many. It's a loss of life that cannot be replaced. But our system of justice can uncover the truth and hold those who are responsible accountable for their actions. The killer was one of their own, a fellow student, a 15-year-old who we refer to not by his name, but by what he did, the Oxford school shooter. He was convicted and sent away for life, but the search for justice is not over. Now prosecutors have also charged his parents with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Jennifer and James Crumbley are the first school shooter parents to be charged with homicide for the shootings committed by their child. Jennifer was convicted in February. Now James is on trial, and all the evidence is in, and the arguments have been made, and it's time to hear from the jury. Tonight, we take a look at both Crumbleys. What did they do? What didn't they do? What is justice? As we continue our investigation of the Oxford school shootings. I'm Benny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And you have to begin, anytime you talk about this story, this case, this trial, is acknowledge the absolute tragedy that took place in Oxford High School. The loss of life, 4 great lives, 4 young people with incredible futures ahead of them, had already accomplished so much, and were getting ready to do so much more. And they're gone. Madison, Tate, Justin, and Hannah, all gone. 4 bright souls because of one evil person. Now, the shooter has been convicted. He's gone. He's locked up. Out of the conversation. And I think we're at that point right now in this country. School shooters, when convicted, go away. And they're gone forever. Gone. But we're at a different point now. And this case and this trial is at a different place. Obviously, it's about what he did, and it's also about why he did it and why he wasn't stopped. And we're talking about his parents now. The extension of criminal responsibility beyond just the person who is squeezing the trigger, beyond the student, the child who is squeezing the trigger and taking those lives. In this case, we've extended the criminal responsibility beyond to his parents. Now, why do you do this? This is a problem, school shootings in this country, that everyone is looking everywhere for a way to just stop it from happening. And in this respect, what this prosecution team is doing is saying this could have been prevented, this should have been prevented, and his parents knew that this could happen. Jennifer Crumbley, the mother, she's been convicted. You saw the trial here on Court TV. You heard the evidence, you saw her response, you heard her testimony trying to explain her actions and her inactions. But the jury didn't agree. The jury said, no, 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 no. No, you need to do better. You got to wake up. You have a responsibility. You have a responsibility as a parent, especially when you know that there are deadly weapons in the house. You've got to open your eyes, open your ears, open your mind, and understand what is going on in your child's life. And when you get calls from school and your child is doing things, you need to pay attention. And by the way, you also have to think, oh, wait a minute, he's drawing pictures of guns? We have a gun. He has a gun. We purchased it for him sort of illegally. We have some responsibility here. Talk to your son. Make sure he's not bringing the gun. Find out what's on his mind. Get him help. Make that your top priority. Not working, not riding horses, not having affairs. Your top priority is and always should be your child. And if your child is troubled, wow, do something. And I don't know how the solution to a troubled child is buying him a gun. And that's what the jury said. And this is a landmark case. Our parents around the country waking up, we're all concerned about our kids going to school and being safe, but you also have to be conscious of the fact of, okay, do we have deadly weapons at home? If so, is my child okay? Are my weapons secure? Because look out. Look out. After this case, it's a different ball game, folks. Completely different ball game for responsibility because of the problem. Everyone's looking for a solution. This is called deterrence. We need to deter parents from not keeping an eye on their children and being responsible gun owners and understanding what's going on with your child and helping your child and making the school aware if there are issues and making the school aware of, oh yeah, we have a gun. Let's just make sure he doesn't have it with him today. He's been drawing pictures, talking about blood everywhere, was shopping for bullets the day before. We just took him to the range. He was begging for this gun, like he really wanted the gun. Wake up. That's what this is. This is the wake-up time. James Crumbley. Now it's Dad's turn. We'll see if the jury, a different jury, comes to the same conclusion for the dad. Right? Two juries, juries can see things differently. The reason we put these type of cases and all our cases in front of a jury of peers, because they're the ones who have to decide what's okay and what's not okay. And the significance and importance of this case is, okay, what responsibility do parents have for the carnage caused by their child? Big day today in court. The evidence was going in, the closing arguments were being made. Here are the biggest moments.
James Crumbley is not on trial for what his son did. James Crumbley is on trial for what he did and what he didn't do. A parent has a legal duty to exercise reasonable care to prevent the minor child from intentionally harming others or prevent the minor child from conducting themselves in a way that creates unreasonable risk of harm to others. He doesn't get a pass because you don't think the teachers did enough. He doesn't get a pass for that. And the blame shifting is only meant to send a message, I'm not accountable here at all. Even though I bought the weapon, even though I didn't secure it, even though I never got help for my son, even though I could have taken him that day. We have the text between James Crumbley's son and his friend about exactly what he wrote about in the journal. He hears people talking to someone in the distance. I actually told my dad, asked my dad to take me to the doctor yesterday, but he just gave me some pills and told me to suck it up.
911, what location are you going to? Okay, I'm not really sure. I'm at my house. There's an active shooter situation going on at the high school. My son goes to high school. I have a missing gun at my house.
He failed to perform his legal duty to prevent these kids from being killed. And I ask that you find him guilty.
There were a variety of emotions following the shooting on November 30th of 2021 at Oxford High School. Terror, anger, and devastation. On December 3rd of 2021, the parents of a school shooter were charged with involuntary manslaughter for the first time. This case is not about what happened inside of Oxford High School. This case is about what happened outside of Oxford High School. This case is about what James Crumbley knew on and before November 30th of 2021. The prosecution is asking you to second guess the decisions made. You heard no testimony and you saw no evidence that James had any knowledge that his son was a danger to anyone. That James Crumbley knew what his son was planning. That James Crumbley was aware that his son knew where the firearms in the home were hidden. No one testified that immediate parental intervention was necessary on November 30th of 2021 during the meeting with Sean Hopkins and Nick Ejak. No one testified that there was a need for immediate intervention of any kind. Please, follow the law. Review the evidence. Review the instructions. And follow the law. Because I'm confident that if you do that, each of you will have at least one reasonable doubt, and your vote will be not guilty.
Not an easy case for prosecutors to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joining us live from Pontiac, Michigan tonight. Kelly, great to see you. What a big day. What an important case. Tell us about the latest from deliberations today.
Good evening, Vinny. The jurors, they only deliberated for a very short time today. The defense did put on one witness. We heard from James Crumbley's sister, who talked about that she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary with her nephew, Ethan. Then the jurors really heard the closing arguments, and even the judge asked them after closing arguments if they wanted to take a little break before she gave them jury instructions. They said no. They wanted to get right to deliberating, Vinny. And so then they began their deliberations. Then around 4:45, we got a notice that they were going to be ending their deliberations for the day. The judge even said to them that they could go as late as they wanted, but then they decided at about 4:45 that they were going to end for the day, and they are going to resume again tomorrow morning. But they do have a lot to sort through in this case, and they have to deal with a lot of words here. Negligence, foreseeability, the duty, what James Crumbley did, what James Crumbley didn't do, and it depends on whose arguments that they're going to feel were more compelling and what the evidence showed here in this case. Of course, the prosecutor argued that I do not have to prove that James Crumbley knew, because that was one of the main things defense counsel argued. There's no evidence that James Crumbley knew that his son was troubled and needed help. But the prosecutor said, I don't have to prove that. What I have to prove is that even if he was unaware, he should have been aware. What would an ordinary, reasonable person have known, especially, she said, Vinny, when you took a look at that math worksheet in which Ethan Crumbley drew that picture of that person that had that gunshot wound on him and blood oozing out with a lot of different words on that sheet of paper. The prosecutor left the jurors with that image again, saying that someone should have known.
Yeah, I think everyone sitting in that room should have done more. Everyone, the parents and the school. School's not on trial here. I'm sure there's civil cases that will deal with that issue. So let's talk about this jury, because that's important, right? Every jury's a little bit different. What do we know about this jury?
Vinny, this jury appears to be very different than the jury for Jennifer Crumbley. Of course, we were here covering the Jennifer Crumbley case. That was a few months ago, and it was freezing cold here in Michigan. Now, today it was about 70 degrees, so much different time and much different set of jurors. The jurors in Jennifer Crumbley's case took tons of notes. We always noticed them feverishly taking notes. Here in James Crumbley's trial, I haven't noticed a lot of note takers. Some, of course, are taking a few notes here and there. One of the big things that I noticed was the crime crying yesterday when they played that video of when Ethan Crumbley emerges from the bathroom and began that terrible rampage. A lot of those jurors, though, today, 3 of them were dismissed. So now what we have is the jury. They were the alternates. The jury is 6 women, 6 men, Vinny. Most of them are married. Most are gun owners. One of the women on the jury is expecting. So that's the makeup of the jury here. But of course, listening to both sides very closely. And again, different reactions than when we had this case last time with Jennifer Crumbley. And we had a different defense counsel on that case. This time we have the same prosecution team, but a different defense counsel. So it's interesting to watch the different reactions between the two.
I would say on the issue of gun owners, not good for the defense, because responsible gun owners know how to keep their guns safe and out of the hands of their children. And obviously that didn't happen here. If it did, he never would have gotten the gun. So if I was the defense, I wouldn't like gun owners on this jury, but I understand that part of Michigan, lots of folks are, so you're going to have to deal with it. Now, you had an opportunity to speak with the attorney who's representing some of the victims' families.
I did, Vinny. This is Wolf Mueller, and we talked with him during Jennifer Crumbley's case as well. Got a chance to talk with him today. He represents the family, the mother of Madison Baldwin and another victim of the school shooting. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The jurors heard enough about his relationship. For example, when the shooter told his dad, "I need help," and he said, "Suck it up. Here's some medication." That kind of callousness, the jurors heard enough of that. You tie that into what happened the day of the shooting when they're in the conference room, and the important thing that I found was everybody else rushed to the school to see if their kid was okay. He went home to see if his kid had taken the gun. No one else mentioned anybody who could be the shooter except James Crumbley. I thought that was huge. And the fact that he and his wife abandoned their child and tried to flee and were found hiding in Detroit in a warehouse, that spoke volumes to me.
And Vinny, what Wolf was referring to there is then after the school shooting, how James and Jennifer Crumbley left town. They left here in Pontiac, Michigan, and then they went to Detroit. They were staying in an art studio. The prosecutor was talking about that during closing arguments, saying they took money out, $6,000 out of the bank, and they were hiding out in that art studio, basically abandoning their son. Now, I will say defense counsel did get a point in there. This was during her questioning one of the detectives, in which she asked him about confronting James Crumbley that one morning when they ended up finding them inside that art studio. And he even admitted that it was possible that James Crumbley was going to be turning himself in that morning at 7 a.m. But she didn't really, defense counsel really didn't talk too much about that during closing arguments, but the prosecutor sure did, talking about them taking off after their son committed the school shooting.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
And Vinny, you know, I want to say we did get a chance to, last time when we were here during Jennifer Crumbley's trial, we talked with a lot of the parents of the victims. And this time as well, one of our affiliates got a chance to talk with one of the victims' mothers. This is Madison Baldwin's mother. And I believe we have that. We could play that for you.
It's not really hard to hear the defense. It's hard to relive it every single time. That's the hardest thing. You know, just every time you see something, it's different. Every time you hear something, it's different, and it just gets harder and harder. And I you know, it's for all the families. Like, there's things that we least expect, and then there's things that we thought we were going to expect, and it's not what we thought it was going to be. And you know, we're parents, so it's hard to see some of these things. Parents do.
And Vinny, you can only imagine what these parents have been through. They've had to sit through this now 3 times. They had the Miller hearing. This was for Ethan Crumbley when they were deciding whether or not he could be tried and sent to prison without the possibility of parole. Of course, that's the sentence he did end up receiving. So the parents sat through that. Then they sat through Jennifer Crumbley's hearing, or trial rather, and now they're sitting through James Crumbley's trial. So 3 times they've had to relive this. Probably they relive it over and over again in their head. But hearing it, even us sitting here again in court as they're putting up the pictures of the victims and seeing it again and again, and the constant reminder, it's just such a tragic situation.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Let's talk about Jennifer Crumbley now. She was convicted. What's going on with her now?
And Vinny, she is in the county jail. So right where we cover this court case at the Oakland County Courthouse, she is in the county jail right there. Her sentencing is going to be April 9th. She faces up to 15 years in prison. Of course, they're going to have to take a look at the guidelines here, and also the fact, so it was a severe crime. There were 4 people that ended up dying. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. But she does not have a criminal history, so there's no criminal record, and of course that's extremely important in sentencing. So what the judge ends up deciding, we'll have to wait and see. But of course, I'm pretty certain Karen McDonald, the prosecutor in this case, will probably be asking for the maximum, which is that 15 years, and then defense counsel will try to get a lesser sentence. But it's pretty certain she will at least serve a few years behind bars, if not the maximum.
Yeah, and that's a lot of range. I mean, you know, a year, 2 years to 15 years, that's a lot of time. So it's an important hearing. Kelly Craft, I know you got a big day tomorrow starting at 8:30. Verdict Watch continues. As we know here at Court TV, a verdict can happen at any moment. They may have reached a verdict today and wanted to sleep on it. It could be first thing in the morning on Julie Grant's show. So, Kelly, thank you so much. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, folks, for that. And in the meantime, when we come back, we're going to compare the actions and inactions of Jennifer Crumbley, who's been convicted, with her husband, James Crumbley, who the jury will decide upon perhaps as early as tomorrow. Plus, coming up next hour. In Kissimmee, Florida, Madeline Soto was reported missing by her mom on February 26th and found dead on March 1st. No one's been charged with her murder, but her mom's boyfriend, Stephen Stearns, is facing 60 charges, including sexual assault on a child and possession of hundreds of images of child sex abuse.
Stephen Stearns was transported from the Orange County Jail to the Osceola County Jail, where he is being held on capital sexual battery charges filed by the Kissimmee Police detectives.
The first parents in America to be charged in a mass school shooting.
Involuntary manslaughter and 4 counts of it.
The gun recovered from the shooter was the same gun that was purchased by his father.
Jennifer was found guilty.
Who is responsible for storing the gun?
Now the school shooter's father is set to stand trial.
My husband is.
The school shooter dad trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Yeah, and we go to the shooting range all the time. He goes with you, so he knows yes. I'm trying to teach him safety. Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so the gun is obviously one of the centerpieces of this case, right? Access to the gun. The school shooter, he can't buy it himself, you know, there's a deadly weapon, and the connection of the parents to this gun is an important issue. You'll remember, we've seen the videos of both mom and dad, James and Jennifer, both going to the shooting range with the mass murderer, right? So they're both there, like physically there. Dad and his son, mom and her son. So it's a hobby. They're trying to spend some quality time with their mass murderer son, and we have the video. So what exactly is their relationship? Because Jennifer's already been convicted, and this was a part of the case. I want you to take a listen to Detective Timothy Willis here, who is reading journal entries from the mass killer. Okay, so he's writing in his journal and talking about the connection and the link between the killer, his father, and the gun. Take a listen.
shooter writes, I want to shoot up the school so badly. Soon, I am going to buy a 9mm pistol.
Same exhibit, page 17. Go ahead.
All I need is my 9mm pistol, which I am currently begging my dad for.
And page 22.
I will have...
This is the binding, right?
The binding, correct. I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school.
Okay, so dad buys it. Dad is storing it, right? And the mass killer knows that. Now, Jennifer Crumbley testified at her trial. James did not. But she did, in fact, testify. And listen to her testimony. She's really kind of distancing herself from the gun and her son. Take a listen.
They had rented a 9mm at the shooting range before, so they knew it was the type of gun, or the size gun, I guess what it is, that they wanted to get. And my son and my husband did a lot of texting back and forth. My son did a lot of research on it, and they're comparing different ones that they wanted to buy. That went on for a couple months. My husband just kind of kept blowing it off, like, not right now, not right now. And then I guess when I was out shopping, they said, well, let's go try on Black Friday, see if we can get one on sale, if there's any deals going on. Who is responsible for storing the gun?
My husband is.
Okay, explain why you say he's responsible for that role.
I just didn't feel comfortable being in charge of that. It was more his thing, so I let him handle that. I didn't feel comfortable putting the lock thing on it. I just rather not let him do it.
Well, as uncomfortable as she may have been, she went to the range, she brought the gun, and she was the last one with the gun before the killer killed everybody. Let's bring in our guests. In New York, nationally known psychotherapist and host of Talking Live and the Bite-Sized podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. In Chicago, Illinois, criminal defense attorney, host of Defense Diaries, Bob Mata. And in St. Louis, Missouri, licensed mental health clinician specializing in trauma and child abuse and neglect, Sharana Brown is with us. Great to see everyone. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, how do you see the responsibility and roles of mom and dad, gun and son?
Well, the first problem that I have is that the son is not legal age to have a gun, and there's probably a reason for that. So the fact that the father even went out and said, I want to buy a gun for you, I think is problematic. And they seem to be oblivious to their son's mental health issues. So this is not a comfortable situation. We know statistically that it's young boys who are most vulnerable to spree shootings like this at school. So this lack of awareness with buying a lethal weapon for an underage child just doesn't look good, and clearly it didn't turn out very well for the son, for the school, or for the parent.
Sharonda, do you think the killer manipulated his father to get him that gun? Or do you think dad was like, hey, I'll get my son a gun and we'll do some bonding? What was going on here?
I definitely think there was some manipulation there on the son's part. He knew what he wanted it for. Now, whether or not the dad knew what he was doing, I think that the dad was maybe overcompensating for the neglect they were already participating in. And sometimes parents will do that. They'll overcompensate and they'll do things thinking, okay, this will make my child happy, so I'm going to do this. But I don't think he thought that the child was going to use the gun. I don't think people take anything seriously when they need to. Most people are reactive instead of proactive. So I think they both had their intentions. I think the child was manipulative in his efforts, and I think the dad wanted to please his child because he knew that he had been neglecting him the whole time. So it was more about pleasing him and not taking responsibility for actually being a parent.
Bob Mata, legal responsibility here, right, which is what the jury's trying to figure out. The last jury, despite Jennifer Crumbley's testimony, distancing herself from all this. Oh no, that was James. Dad was in charge of all that stuff. What are your thoughts comparing mom versus dad and their responsibilities for that gun?
Yeah, and Vinny, you nailed it. on your intro to this thing. I felt like I was listening to myself for the past 2 days talking about this case. At the end of the day, that math test, which had "help me" in all bold, I can't stop the thoughts, blood everywhere, that begins and ends the analysis for me. The day that is handed to them in the office and emailed to Jennifer Crumbley, I really don't care what they may know or may not know going into that day. Any parent that is handed that at the school and doesn't immediately take their kid out of that school and get into the car with them and start immediately talking to them to find out what is going on with their child is on the hook. And you know what? The way that I see it now, parents are on notice. You better start paying attention to your kids. Because if they go out and do something horrific like this, even if they're not in your presence and you've neglected your duties as a parent, you're on the hook. That's the way I look at it.
Let's take a listen to Sean Hopkins, the counselor from Oxford High School, who was in that meeting with the parents. We've covered the school's responsibility on the show several times. We're focusing now on the parents' part in this meeting. Let's take a listen.
I handed Mom the list of resources and said I'd like him to get support outside of here. I'd like him to get help and have somebody that he can talk to. And Mom made mention that they would, but they couldn't right away. So I told Mom that I wanted him to get help as soon as possible, today if possible, and was told that wasn't possible.
Okay, told by James, Jennifer, or both?
By Jennifer.
Okay.
James at that time, to my memory, was talking with his son.
Do you recall what he said?
I remember it, yes. He was looking at the math assignment with his son.
When you say math assignment, are we talking about
It's the hard copy.
So we're referring to this, Exhibit 128?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was talking to his son and mentioned that, you have people you can talk to. You can talk to your counselor, you have your journal, we talk. And it felt appropriate at that time.
When his wife said that they can't, did he protest that?
No. I didn't want him to be alone. So in this context, my thought was when parents were saying they had to return to work, I wanted to make sure the student was with people. Okay. Because my concern was him.
Tell us how the meeting ended.
Jennifer asked if they were done. Which felt abrupt.
Dr. Robbie Ludwig, your thoughts about Mom versus Dad in that meeting? Now, she's going back to work at an actual, I think, an office, a real estate office. He's going to do DoorDash, which I believe you kind of set your own schedule. It's real work. You make real money, but here they are leaving. What are your thoughts about Mom versus Dad in the meeting?
Well, the mother abruptly leaving, it sounds like she was annoyed. She was annoyed that she was taken out of work, that there's extreme denial there, that her son had an issue, that he could be dangerous to others or to himself. And it is mind-boggling to me that a mother would not say, I need to take my son out of school and get him help. This is out of the scope of normalcy. But it just sounds like they were very self-focused and self-centered. I didn't hear the details behind the father, but they were both complicit together. They both were in sync in the worst possible way. Ignorance, denial, dismissal, whatever you call it, they are culpable for what happened to their son.
Our guests are staying with us. When we come back, James Crumbley didn't take the stand, but we did hear him, and the jury heard him. You will hear him next.
It was hidden in our arm, in Vicky's stomach, and the bullets were hidden in a completely different spot. Underneath some jeans. And finally got in the sand. That's why I called you guys. I called you guys right away and let you know.
All right, so that's James Crumbley saying, "Look, I called you guys right away, I'll let you know." Well, that's now being used against him because does it show that he has knowledge that, oh, there's a school shooter? Must be my son. Better go check for a gun. Take a listen to the 911 call.
911, what's the location of your emergency? Okay, I'm not really sure. I'm at my house. There's an active shooter situation going on at the high school. My son goes to high school. I have a missing gun at my house. I need an officer to come to my house right away, please. I think my son took the gun. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm really freaking out. My son's name is James Crumbley.
Okay, Sharonda Brown, what does this tell you, this reaction by the father? There's a school shooting, goes home immediately, the gun is missing, calls 911, it's my son.
I think it says, oh crap, I ignored my child. I ignored the signs. I ignored the symptoms. It's a very reactive reaction is what it is because he wasn't proactive. There was negligence. So he's looking at himself in this shame and this fear because I don't think nobody realized it was going to happen. I think they didn't take it seriously. There are people who have children to be parents, and there are just people who have children. And in this case, he didn't discipline himself enough to discipline his child. And I think all that came to the forefront once he realized what was happening.
Bob Mata, what do you think the jury takes away from this reaction by James Crumbley, that there's a school shooter right away, first thing, let me see if the gun's there. It's not there. My son's the shooter.
What they're going to take away is why didn't he drive home immediately after leaving his kid at school and drive to the house to see if the gun was there then? That's what they're going to take away from it.
That's a problem. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, I don't understand in that meeting, he's speaking with his son, like one of the questions so easily could have been, did you take the gun? Like, I don't understand why that, he's talking with him saying, you can talk to us, you can do this. Why not bring that up at that moment? It's on his mind.
Yeah, well, clearly there's a communication issue. And maybe the father doesn't know how to talk about relevant issues with the son, and the son clearly had no way to communicate the anger and aggression and perhaps the humiliation he was feeling for whatever reason, whatever was going on in his life. The father, when he called 911, he knew. He knew exactly what happened. His gut told him then, but it was a little, too late. And that's the problem that we're seeing. Kids are supposed to be in school. They should not be turned into lethal war zones because parents are not parenting the way they should. And it's a complex issue that we need to address. Otherwise, it's going to become so bad. Kids are not going to feel safe at all going to school, and that's not where we need to be culturally.
Let's take a look, listen to another little piece of his interview here describing his son.
I'm not even think about that. I mean, it's Ethan. Ethan's he's a perfect kid. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't get in trouble at school. He doesn't that's how.
Bob, what do you think about that statement where he says and we know what he has just done?
It just goes to the absolute obliviousness of both of these parents, both of them, in terms of what was going on with their kid. And Vinny, you know as well as I do, anybody that went through high school that takes a quiz, Ethan Crumbley absolutely knew that test was going to be seen by his teacher. He knew because they called home the day before when he was searching for bullets on his phone in class. He knew they were going to be contacted. He was begging to be stopped. Period. That test is the entire case. It really is. And The school failed those 4 beautiful children by not doing anything about it, and the Crumbleys failed everybody. Everybody. If any one of the 3 of you would sit here and tell me if you were handed that math test that you would leave your kid at school, I wouldn't believe you, not for a minute. No parent would ever leave their kid at school. I don't care if you have to go to work. Stick them in the car with you while you're doing your DoorDash deliveries, or call off. Your kids take precedent over everything. As you can tell, I'm adamant about this one, Vinny.
Absolutely. Sharonda Brown, we have about 40 seconds. I'll give you the final word tonight.
I think that what it boils down to is if people don't acknowledge there's a problem, then they don't have to do anything about the problem. And what we see here is both parents denying that there's an issue because it requires them to do work. Parenting is about doing work. It's about overseeing your children's work. It's about making sure they make good and bad choices, making sure that they know right from wrong. These are just people who had children. They weren't parents. They didn't value mental health. They didn't value school. They didn't value education. They valued their free time. And that's what we see here with this case. They value the lack of effort to be parents. That's what they value. And this is the result of that. This is what we get.
Big thank you to our guests, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, Bob Mata, Sharonda Brown. We'll see you again really, really soon.